কিশোর কিশোর দিচ্ছে, কিশোর দিয়ে যাচ্ছে। যাচ্ছে লাইট রিফ্লেক্ট করছে আমাদের মুখ থেকে ছবিটা সোজা করলে তবে রিফ্লেক্ট করে
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna,
তুলে দিয়ে ও এক হাতে মারবে তবে আমি এটা নিয়ে যাচ্ছি এটা এটা কাজ তুলবি খাঁচা গলায় দিল এখন তুলবি খাঁচা গলায় দিল
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare
ওটা বাহাতে নিয়ে
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. তুমি দেখো এদিকে হরে।
Hey Atmaram Prabhu. This year we're very fortunate to have Atmaram Prabhu here. Guru Maharaj is a very senior disciple. I was standing in Mangal Arati this morning and someone came and touched my shoulder and who was that? And I didn't pay attention. And finally when I looked around I saw Atmaram Prabhu was a little ways away. This is the first time Prabhu has been here for this program. So I think we'll start with some video of Guru Maharaj. Some more things about that. The first four having a big pandal here, and then a little later we shifted to sometimes a Panchatattva extension, and then to the community hall. Is this happening? Ready to go? Okay, what is this video? It's a Combination. How long is it? 40 minutes. So 14. Okay. So we have a 14-minute video, which is a collection the devotees have put together from different lectures of Guru Maharaj. And I remember one temple president, senior devotee in Canada, he once commented after Guru Maharaj had visited there, he said, definitely there's no other two ways. He says, either Gaur Govinda Maharaj is a Premi Bhakta, or he's the biggest cheater I've ever seen. He's quite a powerful speaker. So we'll go ahead and watch this for about 14 minutes, and maybe I'll make a few comments, and we can have some different talks. If anybody would like to share something, and maybe you met our Guru Maharaj, or maybe you didn't meet him, but you just have some appreciation, you read some of his books or heard something, we'd like to hear from devotees. So if I want to stop it, just hit the space bar. This is in Paris in 1986. I think it's in the house of Hari Vilas Prabhu. This is the first time that Guru Maharaj went to the West. A little interesting historical note for some of you. The person who brought him to the West for the first time, paid his ticket, was Bhagavan Prabhu. And it's quite interesting what happened in Paris. And first place he went to was Italy, and then he went to Paris a little later. So this is an excerpt from this very early talk. Guru Maharaj was very, very thin at this time. Go ahead, Prabhu.
believers, according to a year ago, when he died, in so much school, they practice this holy name. From the woman, they go down. They go keep them. They are changing. Tell you to change.
When a Sankirtan party is out on the streets in Sodom and Gomorrah, and the so-called Christians are hearing the holy name, how does this waking up love of Godhead within their hearts? If they're engaged in sinful activities, how does hearing the holy name? How does others?
Those are engaged in activity. Yes. They cannot hear, but you speak it. Two congregations are changing in mind, love. If your chanting is pure, this sound vibration, transcendental sound vibration touches them, they wake up. What did my Maharaj do? When he came here, he came in a pair of this kurta. On the pair of kurta. He goes to the square park. It is hippies. Long beards, long hairs. Isn't there? Long beards, long hairs. Half-naked boys down slowly, intoxicated, taking very dreadful drugs, marijuana, LSD, pagal, mad arrows, rolling on the ground. So he goes there and says, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Playing chants. The sound like this of transmission touches them. Peace. Pagal, mad fellow, go there and look around. Look around. He's chanting. Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. These are effect. Pure name is effect. Yes. Mahaprabhu met the jungle animals. The tigers, the lions, the bears, the snake. Yes, all jungle animals. Yes. Let them wake up. Let them chant, dance and chant and dance. Yes. You are human beings. Why can't you? So when the hippies come, flock around him, they say, he chants fast, feels the overmost of the transcendental vibration. Then he said, you chant. Isn't it? Don't you say so? Chant. You see, those are very, very simple. They cannot utter. Just cannot utter. They cannot utter. It is Suddhatma. It is pure source, not impure source. But it's Sadhu's mercy. Such a sadhu, pure sadhu, mercy is very powerful. They say, you must hear, they will chant. They are chanting. Hare. Oh my God, chant. Yes, association chanting, then comes Hare Krishna. That is Sadhu's mercy. Yes, very powerful. If you can feel like, say, the whole atmosphere in this transcendental sound vibration, it will touch them. Yes. Their consciousness will be awakened and purified. Even this, Rukyavata Poshupati, Bolite na pare, they cannot utter the trees, the mountains, the bars, this, they cannot utter. If they hear, they will be telling. Yes, transcendental sound vibration tells them, they will be telling. Human beings. You cannot utter. Yes, follow such a sadhu. Yes, go on. Yes, have to pay on it until you pay. Don't be desperate. Don't feel yourself disappointed, Baba. No, have to pay. Yes. Understand? Yes, definitely.
Guru said that Krishna is theoretical and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is practical. It's just Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is practical. This is the contribution of Srimati Radhika.
Yes, yes, yes. Mahaprabhu Radha. Mahaprabhu Radha. Radha is moving. Is moving. Yes. Yes. Gauranga Rahemara Radhanga Sparsana. Brajendra Sutavina Mahaspasana. That is onward. This is not body of Gauranga. This is Radhanga Sparsana. This is body of Radharani. Only Brajendra Nanda, only son of Nanda can touch this body. Nobody can touch that. Yes. This Hare Krishna Mahamudra is Alakam, it is in Radha Tatra. Yes. And all gopis led by Radharani, they chant Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Yes. Very nice illustration is there inside Tantra. From that book you can see how in Vrindavan, all the gopis and Radharani, the Veena of this musical instrument chanting Hare Krishna, below, Prabhupada says, all Nikai, devotees, all Bhakta chanting this thing. In the Goloka Premanand, yes, that is the all right, yes.
It's Sila Dvaita. We will call Lord Chaitanya.
Yes,
Praise.
yes, Abhidhana.
We will call Lord Chaitanya. Will Lord Chaitanya anyway appear in 500 years ago?
500 years ago.
In Sila Dvaita, we will call Lord Chaitanya. He didn't call me. Will Lord Chaitanya appear in 500 years ago?
This is coincidence. This is strange coincidence. You understand? Advaitacharya came, Advaita saw the condition of the Kali Yuga people, so degraded, suffering. Then he promised, unless I make the Supreme Lord appear, you understand, then I will go on this name of Tuhindasyt. No, on this name. He promised. Yes. Every morning, with tulsi leaf, Ganges water, offering Gopalershala, thundering voice, chanting and calling from God. There is awesome sex there. Then my Christian will say, Nara Huka. Under a skull of Nara, another name of the Bible, cannot make me stay there, so I come down, she said. That is, such a dear devotee can make the Supreme Lord appear. Yes. Bhakti Sarvada Upaya Paramatma, no. Bhagavad says, by the will, by the desire of such a bhakta, such a dear devotee, Krishna appears. Only such a devotee can make Krishna appear. Who can make him appear? Yes, that's such a devotee. Krishna had already developed that desire. I said, I go again. I said that, I go again. As a bhakta, as a devotee, as a ruler of bhakta, devotee, and try bhakti in my whole life, and I'll preach it, I'll teach it. You understand? So that desire is already there in Krishna's mind. At the same time, Advaita calling is there, simultaneous. You follow? So he can yes, only such a devotee, dear devotee, can make him happy. Yes, Bhakti Sarvada. He will have such a devotee, he can make it. Otherwise, nobody can make him happy. He can make it anyway. Such a devotee. You follow? Bhakta Paradhina Vastantrita Sadhika Bhakti Bhakti. That is supremely independent. Supremely is say, I have no independence. I have no independence. I am dependent on my bhakta, on my devotee. Yes. He said, I have no independence. What the bhakta said, I do. I have no independence. Yes.
Krishna and Radharani washing their bones on the earth when they were 500 years ago fasting. Were they washing themselves as washing?
When Krishna Balaram came, as Guru Mahaprabhu and Nityananda 500 years ago, in Goloka Vrindavan, there was Krishna Balaram watching Gaura. So that when Krishna Balaram descended at Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, by the simultaneously at the same time, Ulla, so the Krishna and Balaram were watching the observance. Are Baba! Mahaprabhu is Krishna. Mahaprabhu is Jagannath. So when Mahaprabhu was chanting, dancing before Jagannath in Puri, Ram Jagannath, Rathayatra was there. So Jagannath was watching. Understand my body? Oh yeah. Jagannath, Gopi Vismito, it's singing and dancing is so wonderful. Even Lord Jagannath became amazed. Jagannath, Gopi Vismito, yes. Jagannath was watching how he himself is dancing. Thank you.
Go Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. So, I'd like to just share a few thoughts with everybody. To begin with, my personal vision of our Guru Maharaj. And when we look at someone, when we get to know someone, we're all hankering for someone to understand us. And that's an innate thing. And even Krishna himself wants to understand himself. And therefore he comes to understand himself. He comes in the mood of Srimati Radharani as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I first heard of Guru Maharaj, I think it was like in 1992 in Alachua, Florida. There's one senior devotee, there's a friend of mine. And I went to see him one day. And he told me, he said, "Oh, did you hear? Gaur Govinda Maharaj is coming soon." And I said, "Who's that?" And he said, "You haven't heard of Gaur Govinda Maharaj?" I said, "No." He said, some people say that he should be the Acharya after Srila Prabhupada. And some people say that he should be kicked out of the movement. So I said, "Oh, this sounds very interesting. I'd like to meet this person." I read something recently from a secular author. I feel a little funny, especially in front of Guru Maharaj's disciples, reading something to you from a secular author, but it really deeply touched me and made me think something about Guru Maharaj. This is from the famous writer George Orwell, from his book 1984. And what he said really, again, struck me very much as being indicative of the mind of our Guru Maharaj. He said that the most terrible loneliness is not the kind that comes from being alone, but the kind that comes from being misunderstood. And looking through, we've had some, Guru Maharaj made, I don't know how many diaries, 15 diaries or more, volumes of his diaries. And we've had some excerpts of those translated. They were very personal, and sometimes perhaps I don't think he would appreciate if they were shared. But some things we were confident about. And from the earliest diary entries, what really struck me was a kind of transcendental loneliness that I could see in him. And speaking to his friends who grew up in Gadaigiri and his family members, they said that he was a very different kind of child. When childhood means you have friends and you're just goofing off and playing all the time. But they said he was a very serious child, and he didn't play with the other children. Rather, he just wanted to do kirtan with his uncle Gopinath Giri, who was a Paramahamsa, and with his family members. the Giri family, who were very famous Kirtaniyas, and he wanted to worship the deity of Gopal, Shri Radha Gopalji, who'd been in their family now for almost 400 years. And it's a long story about that. We wrote a book called the Gopal Jew, the beloved deity of Srila Gaur Govinda Maharaj, and I think they have that on the table in English and in Hindi too. So that really struck me, and it struck me speaking with the headmaster at the school. He was a high school teacher at one point. Very interesting, the number of the students who were learning under him later became his disciples. And speaking with the headmaster there, he was a very different kind of person. From his childhood, he read, by the time he was 8 years old, he'd read the Gita, the Bhagavatam, and the Chaitanya Charitamrita. He was just a very lonely kind of person. And reading in his diaries, he was always looking for association. In fact, his last diary entry, the day that he left here in Mayapur, all of his diary entries, he would pray to Gopal. Dear Gopal, today this happened. Dear Gopal, that. Dear Gopal, I had this prayer. And that day he had a prayer. Dear Gopal, please give me like-minded association. It's a paradoxical kind of thing, which George Orwell spoke about very nicely, that this kind of loneliness, he says that the kind of loneliness that doesn't come from silence, but from the overwhelming noise of a world that doesn't truly hear you. You feel like the truest parts of yourself, the raw, unpolished, and beautifully complex pieces of who you are, go unnoticed, misunderstood, or even ignored. And he said to be misunderstood is to feel disconnected. And I know, speaking with him, I had the good fortune for a short time, for 4 or 5 weeks, traveling with Guru Maharaj as his personal servant in 1994 in Europe. And I saw that thing in him. Very, very few people understood him, even amongst the disciples of Guru Maharaj. In the Hari Bhakti Vilas, Srila Sanatana Goswami quotes a shloka which he says, Advaitam cha parityagyat, that one of the qualifications of a disciple is they should give up the attitude that I'm non-different from Gurudev. In Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in one article, he says that there's different types of Bahirmukh Sishyas, or external disciples. We spoke about this recently in Puri. One of which is called the Guru Giri. And the Guru Giri is someone who wants to make a business out of their Guru. And they want to advertise. And therefore, this program, as we were mentioning, we've been doing for 29 years now. It's always been a little awkward for me because it's here in Mayapur. I remember having conversations with devotees like Bhakti Charu Maharaj who were coming, and I wasn't really sure what to do, what the proper etiquette is, because he's a very senior devotee, and we're going to have a kirtan, and Maharaj is a wonderful kirtaniya, but do I go and ask him to pray to his godbrother? Is that proper etiquette, or what is the proper way to do things? Because our Guru Maharaj very much liked proper Vaishnava etiquette. As fanatical disciples, we like it if everybody worships Guru Maharaj. But the nature of the individual soul is that we all have different relationships with different persons, and we should respect that. So I remember asking Bhakti Charu Maharaj if he wanted to sing, and he asked me, what song should I sing, sir? And I said, well, Maharaj, as you like, you can sing O Hey Vaishnava Thakur, or you can sing Gurudev Kripa Bindu Diya, or Sri Guru Charana Padma. He chose Sri Guru Charana Padma. And I remember having a talk with him how that made me a little uncomfortable, because my purpose in this program is to try to remember and try to please our Guru Maharaj. And he had a very, very intense, specific mission. As this year, I've just been thinking a lot about his loneliness, his transcendental loneliness. And we saw that in so many ways. He told us in Bhubaneswar, when Srila Prabhupada came there in February of 1977, and Prabhupada established the cornerstone of the Krishna Balaram Mandir, which is the last temple Prabhupada established in this world before he left. There was a number of devotees traveling with Srila Prabhupada. And our Guru Maharaj had made a small mud hut for Prabhupada. At that time, that place was a jungle. Sometimes Govinda Maharaj was giving lectures there to some of the local villagers. One such evening, he spoke for an hour or two, and when he finished, a cobra fell off of his lap. It had crawled onto his lap. I remember him talking about how once he moved a trunk, and there was a huge black scorpion underneath it. It was quite a wild place. And at that time, the devotees who were traveling with Srila Prabhupada, there were so many senior devotees, and there's some photographs of that. At the time, there was devotees with Prabhupada. They didn't relate to it. And they were coming to Prabhupada and saying, Prabhupada, this is not good. We can't build a temple here. We should build a temple in Jagannath Puri. No one's going to come here. And Prabhupada told them, he said, this temple will be, this is what our Guru Maharaj used to repeat, this temple will become the best temple in the world. And Prabhupada said, this will become the center of Bhubaneswar. And the devotees were kind of looking around. Yeah, right. There was no road, there's no nothing. But today, there's a major highway right in front of it. And that IRC village area is the fastest growing part of Bhubaneswar today. And Srila Prabhupada's prediction is coming true. So our Guru Maharaj was there. He made that hut for Srila Prabhupada. There was no toilet for Srila Prabhupada. There was no running water for Srila Prabhupada when he came. So some of the senior devotees, Gargamuni Prabhu and some others, they had arranged for Srila Prabhupada to stay in a state guest house. Nice, comfortable place in the center of Bhubaneswar. And Prabhupada said, no, I want to stay in this hut that my disciple child, Gaur Govinda Maharaj, made for me. And Prabhupada stayed there. They arranged like a lattice to cover Srila Prabhupada when they had a tea well. Guru Maharaj had arranged for a tea well to come. He arranged for electricity because he knew Srila Prabhupada would want to be able to translate. And so Srila Prabhupada was taking bath behind that lattice, and he was going to do his bodily business in the fields. Bhagavat Maharaj now was there at that time, and Prabhupada called for him, and he said that I want you to be the temple president here. And Bhagavat Maharaj wasn't very excited about that. He wanted to go back to America. He said, Prabhupada, we have this amazing preaching program coming up in America, and I'm going to travel. We're going to do books. And Prabhupada said, you should stay here. So many people can travel and preach. And he started getting nervous then. He said, well, Prabhupada, actually, my health's not very good. If I go to America, I'll get my health back. And Prabhupada said, this is very good here. You go and pass stool in the fields. You'll get good health here. Like that. So Prabhupada didn't mind that. And Prabhupada started translating there in that small hut. He began his translation of the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And it was there in that place, looking at some of the photos. We also have some photos in 1974 when Gaur Govinda Maharaj was here in Mayapur with Srila Prabhupada. And it always strikes me, he's always kind of in the back. And all the big, important devotees are in the front. He used to tell us sometimes, he would say, you should look out for the back benchers. Don't just see the big, prominent people in front. So for me, when I think of him, I always think of this kind of transcendental loneliness. And how, maybe we'll speak a little something more later about how, in the amazing way he left this world. One of the things that struck me the most about his departure was he was surrounded by hundreds of loving disciples. A few days before he left this world, he was speaking privately to one of our godbrothers, and he told him that just as Srila Bhaktisiddhanta felt disgusted and left this world early, I'm also thinking to leave early, but I'm going to go to Gadayagiri and speak to Gopal and see what Gopal says. Because I know, traveling with Guru Maharaj, he always kept a picture of Gopal. And we would arrive someplace, and Guru Maharaj, the first thing he said, where's Gopal? And the servant, that was the first thing he had to do. He'd open up the suitcase and bring out the picture of Gopal. And the very last thing that Guru Maharaj asked for, Atmaram Prabhu was there in the room, He was speaking some Krishna Katha. Some ecstatic symptoms manifested in his body, became choked up. And he told the devotees, I'm sorry, I can't speak anymore. And then he asked the devotees for the picture of Gopal. And he told them to do kirtan. And he's looking at the picture and he said, Gopal. And he left. So a few days before he left this world, he went to Gadaigiri, and we don't know what happened. But in Gadaigiri, he offered some prayers to Gopal. And then he went to Ganashamgiri, I'm not mistaken his name, and told him that you'll see the opening of the temple we're building here. I won't see it. And Ganesham said, what are you, crazy? You're older than I am. Excuse me, you're younger than I am. I'm older than you. How is it that I'll see it and you won't? He said, anyway, Gopal's pleased with you because you donated the property here for the temple for him, the ISKCON. And then Guru Maharaj came here and he left this world. So thinking so much, even at that time also, he was surrounded by disciples and he was thinking to leave. He told this thing to Ganesham Prabhu, he told this to one of our godbrothers. When he came back from Gadaigiri, he called for Chaitanya Chandra Prabhu, the temple president, and he signed his bank account over to him. Bank account that he'd had since, 1977 or something when they started the temple. And then he came here to Mayapur. And he wrote this, entering his diary, please Gopal, give me some like-minded association. And he left. And one of the things that really struck me personally, I was here also in Mayapur when Guru Maharaj left, was he didn't say anything to any of us. I mean, when in the material world, when you love someone, when you have some affection for someone, you oftentimes expect something back. And we call that hoitaki priti. It's priti, some affection, but it's hoitaki with a motivation. I love my husband, I love my wife, but I expect you to listen to me, to do what I want. I love my child, but you have to obey me. We expect something in return. And honestly, I was expecting that surely Guru Maharaj, leaving like that, he would say something to us. He would call for us and say, I'm thinking to go. Because the devotees had so much love for Guru Maharaj. The last class that he gave, it was in Bhubaneswar, Nityananda Trayodasi. And that kirtan, which maybe we may see some excerpts from that kirtan in a little bit, I remember looking around in the room that day. Oh my, it was packed with devotees. You were there, Anuradha. Everybody was crying. It was a very, very, very intense thing. And although he was surrounded by all these persons who love him, he was alone. And he was praying to Gopal, please give me like-minded association, not just a bunch of crazy disciples who jump up and down and say, Jai Gurudev, but someone who deeply understands him. And if you look at the photos again in Bhubaneswar in 1977, when Srila Prabhupada visited there, it strikes me, he's sitting by himself in the corner. And there's so many senior devotees, or Harisari Prabhus in the pictures, Satsvarup Maharaj, Rameshwar Prabhu, so many senior devotees are there. And nobody knew him. He was just a lonely person. And Guru Maharaj told us, at that time, Prabhupada spent 14 days, is that right? 17 days. Huh? 16 days, okay, right in between. Thank you, Anuradha. He spent 16 days, and Guru Maharaj very proudly used to tell us, Prabhupada never spent that much time anywhere at that time. It was very extraordinary, and there was nothing there. During those 16 days, that Srila Prabhupada stayed there, he called sometimes our Guru Maharaj to his hut. And Guru Maharaj told us several times, he said, there was no tape recorder. He said, but I was recording everything in my heart. And some extraordinary exchanges took place. Sometimes myself and some others, we would try to get Guru Maharaj to speak about that. But he wouldn't. There was very private, some of the things that he exchanged with Srila Prabhupada. But he told us some of those things. And some of it really struck me very deeply because it was a very personal, intimate exchange with Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada told him, I want you to accept your own men. I want you to accept disciples. And Guru Maharaj said, Prabhupada, I don't want to be the head. I want to be the tail. And Prabhupada said, no, I want you to be the head. And then Prabhupada gestured outside the many devotees who were there, following him everywhere. Devotees who were very surrendered to Srila Prabhupada, very senior devotees. And Prabhupada pointed at him, he said, they all have problems. And they can't stay. But I want you to stay. And then he told him, you tolerate, 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 cooperate. And we made a slogan of that on our wall in our ashram, a picture of Guru Maharaj, tolerate, 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 cooperate. And that to me epitomizes the kind of loneliness that he had, which is a very paradoxical kind of loneliness, which many of us, I think, can understand. Before we meet the devotees, we just feel like, I just don't fit into this world. There must be something wrong with me. And then we meet the devotees and it's, oh my God, here's some people who understand. And we have so much excitement. But then, paradoxically, sometimes after a few months or a few years, that shelter that we find also in that shelter, sometimes they don't understand us. And that's an even deeper pain. Because when we're with the devotees and we feel the devotees don't understand us, oh my God. There's a few biographies of Guru Maharaj. I wrote one myself. We called this, When Good Fortune Arises. And that was a comment, a phrase that our Guru Maharaj often used, that when good fortune arises, you meet sadhu. But he said before that comes atma krandana, the crying of the soul. And I think of that as that period, that time of loneliness, when we're hankering very deeply in our heart, isn't there someone who understands me? Isn't there someone who can guide me and can give me God? And when good fortune arises, then we meet such a person. There's another new book which I'm advertising. Maybe she'll give me some percentage of the sales if you buy a copy. This is by Anuradha, my senior god sister. It's called From Crow to Swan. Of course, Anuradha was never a crow. She was a swan from the first day. But it's kind of her personal memories of Guru Maharaj, and it's full of different lectures and things from Guru Maharaj. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of, as a footnote, as an introduction to the talks today, and we all want to hear something from different devotees. I'd like to hear devotees understanding what they see of the heart of Gaur Govinda Maharaj. And this is something that I saw in him personally, which really deeply resonated with me. I saw someone who was alone in the crowd, was a lonely person, even though I remember walking down the street in Los Angeles, going to the temple, and there was about 20 of us around him, and there must have been 10 or 15 microphones and video camera, and all the disciples loved him like anything. But he was all alone. One more little story. And then I'd like to ask Pushpavan Prabhu if he can speak something. I had the good fortune to travel in Guru Maharaj in 94, and it was a special time for me because it was the first time I'd ever been to Europe. And it's the first time, Damani I'd met before, but you weren't in Europe in 94, you were in America. Yeah. Lachua, yeah. So, Hare Krishna. Krishna Chaitanya Maharaj ki jai ho. So it was the first time I had ever been to the UK, first time in France, first time in Italy, first time in Spain. And when you go somewhere for the first time, you feel lonely. You feel like, I don't understand anybody. The only person that I knew the whole time was Guru Maharaj. And he was so affectionate to me. Krishna Chaitanya Maharaj, I don't mean to embarrass you. Please excuse me. Thank you for coming. Do you have to go right away? You're okay? All right. Because we're going to have. I just asked your godbrother Pushpavan Prabhu to say something first. That's okay? All right. It's an awkward program because there's so many different things going on at the same time. And we want to try to do this in much as we can, a family kind of way. So anyway, back to my story. So I was traveling with Guru Maharaj, And he was the best friend I have ever had. The most loving person I've ever, more loving than my mother or my father or any friend. And I felt like he knew me more than anyone else. And I felt so close with him. He's the only person that I knew. We go to all these places and they're all speaking Spanish or French, and I don't speak Spanish or French. And I was with him practically 24 hours a day, minus the time he was in the toilet. And I would sleep on the floor next to his bed. Sometimes I slept under his bed. And he was just my best friend. And so that went on. And then we were flying back from Heathrow Airport in London to Delhi. And on the flight, it's a long flight, I don't know, 6 or 8 hours or something. I'm sitting next to him, and this is my best friend, the person I felt the closest to in the whole world. I'm sitting next to him on the flight, and for something like 4 hours, he was sitting next to me, not talking, not chanting japa, not reading, not watching a movie, not speaking, not looking around, not sleeping. He had his eyes open, and he was just looking ahead of himself, almost in like a kind of trance. And then I had the most bizarre feeling I've ever had in my life. I don't know this person at all. Here's the same person that I felt was the closest person to me in my life, who understood me like no one else. And then I had this feeling, this understanding, I don't know him at all. So I've been really happy doing this program every year. We do this not because we want to sell his books, although that would make us happy. Not because we want to make him famous. We probably wouldn't mind that either. But because I like to hear from devotees whose lives were transformed by him, whose lives were touched by him. And I like to hear what they saw in him. Because we all see something different in everyone. Famously, Krishna, when he entered the wrestling arena of Kamsa, different persons saw him in 7 different ways. The wrestlers saw him as death personified. The ladies saw him like Cupid. Vasudeva and Devaki saw him, this is our son. The cowherd boys were there, that this is our homeboy. Everybody saw Krishna in different ways. And similarly, we're all understood in different ways. And so our purpose in doing this, especially, is to try to please our Guru Maharaj. And he told us, he gave me some personal instruction, that he said once, don't be so concerned about presenting me. You present my teachings. And he told us that we should work to help uphold the prestige of Srila Prabhupada's society. So as I've been speaking, this is the theme of my little few-minute talk right now, he was a very misunderstood person. He was a very lonely person. And sometimes as disciples, I can say frankly, we feel a little sad. No, he's not appreciated so much. You know, we have other personalities they have a very big program for, and here we just have a few devotees. And somebody was speaking with me about this a few days ago, and I said, that's okay. That's his whole life. He was always a very lonely person from his childhood. And a person who wasn't understood very well, as George Orwell said. And as George Orwell goes on to explain in a very beautiful way, that paradoxically, that position of being misunderstood paradoxically helps us to understand ourself. Helps us to go deeper into ourself. And it helps us in a deep spiritual way. And so throughout his life, you can see if you read something about his life when he left home, when he took sannyas, when he met Srila Prabhupada in Vrindavan in 1974, the devotees, they thought he was a Mayavadi. He was born and raised in a Vaishnava family. They didn't understand him. Prabhupada told him, you stay here in the temple. The temple president wouldn't let him stay there. He was staying in the Nitai Gaur Radhe Shyam ashram. Prabhupada Priya Sevak Prabhu and I, we used to stay there sometimes when we went to Vrindavan. An old, very simple room, just behind the Krishna Balaram Mandir. Because the devotees didn't appreciate him or understand him. One of his first services there was cooking, and he'd make khichdi. And people say, wow, who cooked today? This is amazing. I've never tasted anything like this. And he said, oh, it was that Mayavadi sadhu.
He cooked that. So there's a kind of thing I think we can all relate to, this kind of loneliness in the material world, and sometimes even a kind of loneliness in the devotee society. And this is a theme that I saw very much in his life. So I want to stop talking so much right now. I'd like to ask Pushpavan Prabhu if he can come and say a few words. I had the good fortune, come Prabhuji, of meeting Pushpavan Prabhu for the first time recently in Jagannath Puri. And I was just very, very touched to get your Sangha Prabhuji and your good wife. And one thing that touched me very much about Pushpavan Prabhu, he's a very gentle, kind of quiet person, kind of person that Guru Maharaj spoke about, one of the backbenchers. Yeah, is that okay?
Yeah, it's good.
All right, you don't mind sitting next to me?
I
Okay.
don't mind. Is there any water?
Yeah,
Okay.
right now it's just...
Okay.
So, let's see here. Krishna Chaitanya Maharaj, after Pushpavan, would you like to say something? Okay.
How much time do we have?
We're pretty flexible. I'm going to tell everybody a little while until 5 minutes, but you can go for 10 or 15.
Okay.
So after after Pushpavan Prabhu, we'll ask Krishna Chaitanya Maharaj, and then I think Devaki Pran Prabhu. Sometimes we're a little flexible and spontaneous, so stuff happens.
Hare Krishna. Talk about a paradox. I never met Gaur Govinda Maharaj. I'm only halfway through the book, When Good Fortune Arises. And I came here as to his disappearance festival to hear from other people, because I wanted to learn more about people who had his association. So it's a paradox that the first speaker would be someone who never met him, hasn't finished the biography, and yet I'm supposed to say something.
But you know, you may know him better than some of us who had physical association. That's a paradoxical thing.
Well, I can say a few things that have really jumped out to me